Hi guys! In this video, I'm going to be reviewing, not necessarily reviewing, but I'm going to be showing you guys how I do my brows, how I fill in my brows using the Moodstruck Obsession Brow Palette. Now this brow palette, I've had it for quite a while, so you can see that it has been getting some good use. This is the dark brunette to black, okay, and this is the one that I use regularly. It's one of my favorite brow products and one of my top 5 favorite Younique products. And you can tell because I actually hit pan, not on one, but on 2 items in the palette. When does that actually happen? Like really, when does that happen with a product that you use that you're not necessarily using it professionally, like a personal product that you actually use and you hit it pan? That means you really love it, right? The Younique palette is set up in a way that it is numbered so that you're aware of how to utilize it. But generally speaking, 3 and 4 I only use when I'm traveling because I have other personal products that I use to achieve these same looks. So in this particular video, I am not going to be showing you how I utilize the entire palette. But if you are interested on how to utilize this palette, you can always check my Facebook group, How to Get Those Brows Under Control, where I do brow tutorials on a weekly basis and showing you the products that I use and how I use them. So let's get started. So we're going to start off with the Touch Glorious Face Primer. This is what I use whenever I'm starting out. This is the base. Of course, I've already added on all my other moisturizer and face prep products. If you want to see that video, just look for how I prep my skin for makeup. So now we're going in with the Moodstruck Eye Primer. This primer is great for mattifying your eyes and preventing creases, especially for me who has oily eyelids. Now we're getting into the nitty gritty with our brow liner. I just use this because there's a spoolie brush on the opposite end, so it gets my brows nice and organized and ready for the application. So I'm going to go in first with the gel from the Brow Obsession Palette. This is going to allow the shadow to adhere and become an actual brow gel. Usually when you have products like brow liners that are in the gel form, they dry out pretty quickly. In this palette, the benefit of having them separate is that you can create it every time you are ready to do your brows so that it doesn't dry out. I have quite a bit of brow pomades and gel liners that dry out and that are dried out because, you know, it just sat there for a while. The benefit of this brow palette, like I said, it allows you to create it as you go. So I'm going in back with the brow liner because of the spoolie brush to do the top brows. Now I brush those hairs down in order to be able to line the natural hairline. And I learned this technique from AJ Crimson. I had a one-on-one with him earlier this year, and he taught me that, you know, making the box Instagram brows was just not cute. So ever since that one-on-one, I started doing this technique where I just brush the hairs down before I line the top portion. So I'm going ahead and filling in the brows, and I'm using the darker of the 2 colors. This would be the number 2, and it allows me just to fill in any areas that are sparse, any areas that, you know, is missing here. So I keep going, keep filling, just keep filling, just keep filling, just keep filling. And you just want to just fill in the areas that are sparse. So now I'm going in with the lighter brown. This is going to allow me to fill in the inner portion of the brow, and it's going to prevent you from looking like stark dark, or like they say Batman wings for your eyebrows. It's going to soften the initial starting point so that your brows don't look so manufactured. And you could, if you don't have a lot of brows and if you don't want your brows to be so dark, you could wipe off the brush first before you go in with the lighter color. But I always, ooh, yes girl, yes, slow-mo honey, slow-mo. But I always, I just keep going with the flow because it's not, I always brush it out later. So I'm going to start the process with the opposite end. Now this part is very important because you want to make sure that you're matching up the left brow to the right brow. So you have to be very careful when you're starting the second brow because you want to make sure that they line up as best as possible. Now I know you've heard it a million times. Brows are not identical twins, they are sisters. We don't want them to be third and fourth cousins now or distant friends. We want them to be sisters. So they don't have to be 100% perfect. And I'm mostly talking to myself because I'm a Virgo and I'm a perfectionist sometimes. But we want to make sure that they look similar enough. Okay? Don't beat yourself up if they're not 100% perfect. So on the opposite eye, I'm doing the same technique where I am brushing down the brows in order to find the natural hairline of my brows to take that line from one end to the other. And if you notice, I'm only starting like three, like, I don't want to say because my math is a little off. I want to say a quarter of the way. Yeah, I'm starting off a quarter of the way instead of like at the beginning of my brows because you know that in the front portion or the innermost portion of your brow, that's where I put the lighter color. So I want to make sure that that is clear, that when you're starting out to line with the darker color, do not start from the beginning of your brow. Now on the bottom, yes, I did, but that was because I wanted to make sure that they line up. But on the top, I never do that. So at this point, I'm going back in with the spoolie in order to brush the hairs back up. Because remember, I brushed the hairs down in order to find that line, that hairline. So now I'm brushing it back up. And as you notice, like the innermost portion is lighter automatically as I brush. So like all the excess powder is coming out. And because I used the gel liner with the powder, it made it a lot easier to blend. Now I'm going in with my concealer. You can use any concealer at this point. I like the Fenty Beauty Concealer because it is not as creamy as the Younique, but it is not as drying as some of the other concealers. It has like the perfect consistency to stay put and be blended out pretty quickly. So because I had the eye primer on my eye, you're going to see that the liner, or I should say the concealer that I put down is not going to be too runny because that mattifying cream from the eye primer is going to prevent it from, moving all over my eye, which is very important. And also why I put on the eye primer first. Because we don't want concealer to be too runny, especially under your eye. You want it to have a thick consistency in order to just clean up what it's supposed to, be dry enough so that wherever you put it, it stays, and then you can use it for its primary purpose with your eyebrows, which is just to clean up and give the illusion of freshly waxed brows. So now I'm going in because like if you make a mistake or for whatever reason you go too high with a concealer, you can always go back in just to perfect that line. And that's pretty much what I'm doing here. And that's a beautiful arch. Just filling in on the opposite end as well. Going back with my spoolie brush. I have one area, especially where I'm working at, I usually have a lot of sparse hairs there. So it takes me a while just to make sure that it's filled in right. Because I don't know if I have a cut there or something, but anyway. So I'm going in with the same concealer on top. Now this is important. Usually I would use, depending on the concealer or the brand, I would use a lighter concealer at the bottom and a concealer that is closer, or a foundation that is pretty much my exact match on the top. But in this case, the Fenty Beauty Concealer, and this is in the shade 385, it's kind of like in between. It's not exactly my color, but the undertone is pretty, spot on. And it's close when blended out, so I think it works for both under eye and above eye. But if your concealer is way too light, do not put it on top of your brows. You want to make sure that if you're going to use the same color concealer, that it is similar to your skin tone or just a smidge lighter. or the concealer that you would use to brighten up your under eye, that's probably the best that you could use. Now this is the Juvia's Place Concealer in number 16. This sucker is very, very, very light. So I would not use this concealer on top of my eye, but I use this actually for my eyeshadow base, believe it or not. So yes, I put on the primer, and then I go in with the number 16 because you see it's very light. And I like the Juvia's Place. You're going to see how this blends out so nicely. The Juvia's Place concealer like is so underrated. Look at that. Look how it blends out. And it's perfect. I mean, it's like Pilouise Who. Pilouise Who. This gives me the perfect canvas to get my eyeshadow ready. Okay? And this is really the last step that I do whenever I'm doing my brows, because obviously I do my brows first before I do my eyeshadow. Then I do my eyeshadow, and then I do my face. But I just wanted you guys to see the process that I use and the process that I follow, in order to get my brows under control. So once the brows are done, then we pretty much get our eyelids ready for the eyeshadow. And there you have it. Here are my brows. Thank you so much for watching. I am Mrs. Dorset with CaribCultura Beauty, and you have a wonderful day.